beasts of burden, and many kinds of vehicles move in a constant stream of traffic, back and forth, east and west, north and south, from historic water routes of trade and commerce, and ancient caravan trails across the desert, to busy streets in growing cities. We see an endless movement of people and goods through one of the most important and complex regions in the world. We call this region the Middle East. This region is sometimes called a bridge land because three continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa, join at the Middle East. When we see the land routes connecting the three continents, and the sea lanes of the world, and the air lanes of the world, we can see that the region is a crossroads of three continents. For centuries, the term Near East was used to describe this ancient region along the Mediterranean. Today, we use the term Middle East to indicate this broader region, from Egypt eastward to, and sometimes including, Afghanistan. It is a region made up of historic countries: Turkey, Lebanon, Syria, Israel, Iraq, Iran, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Afghanistan. These countries have many similarities of geography and climate. For instance, there are arid desert lands in such countries as Arabia and Iran, semi-arid grazing lands in such countries as Jordan and Turkey, oasis regions such as the river valleys of Egypt and Iraq, and throughout the Middle East, smaller oases where springs or wells make it possible for trees and crops to grow, and in many places, man-made oases, fertile regions made by irrigating the land. We'll find people irrigating fields in every country of the Middle East. To help us understand the Middle East, we should understand the importance of water, the need for sufficient water supply. Why is water so scarce? This is why. Most of the lowlands in the Middle East receive only 10 inches or less of rain a year. Not enough for agriculture. Now, let's take another look at these countries. This too is the Middle East. A large oil refinery in Iraq, oil storage tanks on the historic Tigris River, and a modern pipeline that crosses Syria. These are scenes that tell us of modern ways of the development of industries. This derrick is part of a well being drilled for oil. Another way we can understand the people and problems of the Middle East is to understand the importance of oil, a very valuable resource. 3/4 of the world's reserves of oil are in this region, an important fact to nations that need oil. In addition to oil, we've seen something of crossroads and water. Let's examine these three ideas a little more closely. The idea of crossroads is an historic one, for this region has been a melting pot of many civilizations, from the kingdoms of Egypt in the valley of the Nile to the biblical cities of Babylonia. Throughout the Middle East are the remnants of many civilizations that developed through centuries of time. From different peoples came many contributions to ways of living. Overland, by a system of caravan trails, cultures of the Egyptians, Sumerians, Persians, and others were interchanged. Eventually, by water through the Mediterranean, the Red Sea, and the Persian Gulf, cultures of the Middle East were carried to other parts of the world. Today, as in the past, seas and rivers are still important as crossroads. The Nile River in Egypt, for instance, has been, since ancient times, an important waterway of commerce. and it is still important in the trade of Egypt today. Cairo, Egypt is one of the important centers of commerce in the Middle East, as is famous Baghdad on the Tigris River in Iraq, and the port of Basra on the Persian Gulf. Still another historic city of commerce is Istanbul, Turkey, on the Strait of Bosporus between Europe and Asia. Istanbul is one of the busiest crossroads cities of the world. Here, by ships from many world seaports, products of the East, such as dates, figs, tobacco, and olives, are exchanged for products such as machinery, metals, and chemicals. These cattle are being unloaded from a freighter to a small boat, or lighter, that will take them to market in Istanbul. In Istanbul's open markets and busy streets are many people. Most of them are Muslims. About 9/10 of the people of the Middle East are Muslims, and some of the great mosques of the Muslim faith are in Istanbul. We've seen some historic crossroad cities: Istanbul, Baghdad, Basra, and Cairo. On the eastern shore of the Mediterranean is Tel Aviv, in the state of Israel. Although situated on the Mediterranean, Tel Aviv has no natural harbor. From the docks, products of Israel are carried to ocean-going freighters on lighters. Tel Aviv is a modern city in the ancient crossroads of the Middle East. Different from the modern streets and shops of Tel Aviv is ancient Jerusalem, the biblical city. Here, Hebrews, Christians, and Muslims have lived for centuries in one of the most famous crossroads cities of the Middle East. Sometimes a crossroads is not peaceful. Sometimes in lands where different peoples and ideas meet, there are tensions and problems. In our own times, disagreements and even warfare have flared in the Middle East. For example, the Jewish state of Israel and the neighboring Arab state of Jordan have had clashes of national interest. There has been trouble in Jerusalem and in other places along the border. Less famous than Jerusalem, but another important crossroads city, is Tehran, capital of Iran. Here we'll find a city whose broad streets and big buildings show influences of Western ways. Buses and cars, and buildings like these may remind us of European cities. But this flock of sheep is a reminder of the Middle East, and a reminder, too, that most of the people of Iran make their living from their herds, which they graze on the dry lands of the Iranian plateau. These are nomads in Iran. The life they lead is not much different from that of nomads in the hills of northern Iraq, or these nomads in Turkey. We'll find nomads in every country of the Middle East. And why is there more grazing than farming? The reason, as we've seen, is not enough rainfall. But all the lands are not dry. In the uplands and some favored regions, rainfall is greater. In western Turkey, for instance, we find this: places where land is suitable for growing crops. These Turkish farmers are plowing fields where wheat and barley are grown. They are farming with the help of modern machinery imported from the United States. To grow crops and trees in the Middle East, there is usually the problem of getting enough water. This orange grove in Israel would not grow without irrigation. Irrigation methods vary, from this elaborate modern sprinkler system to wells that date back to ancient times. Progress in the Middle East is closely related to getting more water. Large dams, such as this one in Turkey, are being built to store water for irrigation. The water will help create more fertile farmland and thus help raise standards of living. Living standards in parts of the Middle East are also being raised by the increasing wealth from oil. Oil has attracted foreign capital. This company was developed with investments from the United States, Great Britain, France, and the Netherlands. The company, located near the town of Kirkuk in Iraq, is one of many oil concessions in the Middle East. Most of the installations, from the company office building to the drilling machinery, were set up by American and European engineers. Much of the work is done by Iraqi workmen. These boys of Iraq, too, are part of the Middle East, the changing Middle East of today and tomorrow. Today, modern machinery, where once there was nothing but empty desert. And close by, new houses, part of a whole town built with income from oil. In the technical school, young men of Iraq are trained for future work in the highly specialized oil industry. At the modern hospital, medical care is available to the members of the community. Not only better homes, schools, and hospitals, but better wells for water built with the income from oil. And from the oil field, the oil is pumped in steel pipes across the desert to terminals on the Mediterranean or Persian Gulf. From the terminals of the overland pipelines, ships carry the oil to other parts of the world. And so oil is an important part of the geography of this region. It will probably become more important as the nations of Western Europe, the Soviet Union, and Asia look to the rich oil reserves for their growing industries. Besides oil, we've seen that crossroads and water are important ideas of geography here. We saw busy cities that told us that the Middle East was a crossroads of trade, as well as a crossroads of many different peoples and cultures, some of which date back to ancient civilizations. We saw lands of scant rainfall, arid deserts, semi-arid lands used for grazing, and some oasis regions. These things remind us of the vital importance of water in the Middle East. And then we saw the growing importance of oil and how wealth from oil is changing the lives of people in many parts of the Middle East. Crossroads, water, and oil are three ideas that will help us understand the people and the geography of the Middle East, a crossroads of three continents.